Welcome to Kansas City Art Institute's Current Perspectives presentation. Tonight's sponsored by the Liberal Arts Department and its Creative Writing Program. I am Milton Katz, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dean of the Faculty and Professor of Liberal Arts. Kevin Willmott is an award-winning film screenwriter and director who, according to a recent interview in The New Yorker, has devoted his professional career to, quote, one grand idea, a hunger to reclaim Black history and establish it at the very core of the American experience. Kevin has directed 8 feature films and documentaries and collaborated with Spike Lee as screenwriter on Chirac, Academy Award-winning Black Klansman, and most recently, To Five Bloods, which premiered on Netflix this past summer to great acclaim. Most recently, a film he both directed and co-wrote, The 24th, about the Houston Mutiny and Riot of 1917, is currently on demand and continues his exploration on the issues of race and how our history sheds light on contemporary events. Kevin grew up in Junction City, Kansas, and studied drama at Marymount College. After graduation, he returned home, where he began working as a peace and civil rights activist, fighting for the rights of the poor, creating 2 Catholic worker shelters for the homeless, and forced the integration of several longstanding institutions. He then went on to study film at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, where he received several awards and his MFA in dramatic writing. He is presently a professor of film and media studies at the University of Kansas. Ever since I worked with Kevin on a documentary that I helped create a couple of years ago, I was determined to have him share his insights with our campus community. With a deep personal admiration for Kevin's passion for creative activity and social justice, I am proud to have him with us tonight. Thank you all for joining us.
There's never been a black cop in this city. We think you might be the man to open things up around here.
Hello, this is Ron Stallworth calling. Who am I speaking with?
This is David Duke.
Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. That David Duke?
God, last time I checked. What can I do for you?
Well, since you asked, I hate blacks. I hate Jews, Mexicans and Irish, Italians and Chinese. But my mouth to God's ears, I really hate those black rats. And anyone else, really, that doesn't have pure white Aryan blood running through their veins.
I'm happy to be talking to a true white American.
God bless white America. The KKK is planning an attack.
How do you propose to make this investigation?
We'll establish contact over the phone. We'll need a white officer to play me when they meet face to face.
You for the white race, Ron?
Oh, hell yeah.
So there becomes a combined Ron Stallworth.
Can you do that?
With the right white man, we can do anything.
When's the last time they let a rookie lead an investigation? Oh, that's right. Never.
Okay, become his friend. Let's get invited back.
So what kind of stuff you guys do?
Cross burnings, marches. This is fixing to be a big year for us.
You ask too many questions. You undercover or something?
We must unite and organize to fight racism.
Are you down for the liberation of black people?
Power to the people.
All power to all the people.
All power to all the people.
That's right, sister.
For you, it's a crusade. For me, it's a job.
You're Jewish. That hatred, doesn't that piss you off?
You're taking this Jew lie detector test.
Why are you acting like you ain't got skin in the game?
I'm telling you, the wars are coming.
White power! Black power!
Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
That's us, Stallworth brothers. We're on a roll, baby.
America first.
America first! America first!
If I would have known this was a Klan meeting, I wouldn't have taken this mother.
Black GI, is it fair to serve more than the white Americans that sent you here? Nothing is more confused than to be ordered into a war to die without the faintest idea of what's going on. I dedicate his next record to the soul brothers of the 1st Infantry Divisions. Be safe.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Vietnam.
Look what I found.
You're the man in all his glory.
Who was that guy?
That brother was the best damn soldier that ever lived. We bury it. Later on, we come back and collect.
I shall resign the presidency.
Being back here, it is not easy.
You broken man. So what, you blaming yourself?
You don't even know.
No!
I've been loved and put aside. I've been crushed by tumbling tide. And my soul has been psychedelicized.
We've been dying for this country from the very get.
Now the time is come. There are things to realize.
We give this goal
Has come today.
to our people.
Hold on!
In my line of work, I have to be very careful. And that means knowing exactly who I am in business with.
Men of the 24th Infantry. This is Texas. And we have a great opportunity here. A legacy, if proven worthy, will carry us all the way to the shores of France. Things are a little different down here in the South. I will expect you men to obey the racial code.
Yes, sir.
Get back with the others.
Just go ahead and drive this machine.
Officer Cross. This is a white man's world. Every man here has got a lit fuse. Jim Crow's the law. Respect it.
What are we gonna do? The police brutalize us, sir. All we want is to be treated as soldiers. As military police, you are to ensure order of the men of the 24th Infantry only. Drop the knife.
Back up!
I was robbed of my honor. You get out of here before they take yours too.
The general can get the 24th in the fight.
He's never going to do that.
What do we do, sir? William, I've done all I can do here.
We have a problem. We're gonna take our country back.
Law run this town.
There's a militia on the way.
Are they?
Which way did they go?
Keep pushing people down. Sooner or later, they rise up.
Can you identify any of the leaders of the mutiny?
When I aimed the gun, I saw a man. He didn't see one back.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Great to be with you. I want to thank my good friend Milton Katz for inviting me to the terrific Kansas City Art Institute. It's always good to be with Milton and at a great school here. Wish I could be there in person with you guys, but this is how we do things during COVID, right? Again, thank you guys for inviting me. This is it's an honor to always do something connected to the Art Institute. I've been busy the last few years, as you can kind of tell, with several films, and it's a unique time to be making art right now. It's a unique time to be telling stories and to really kind of just be expressing yourself in this world right now, this country called the United States of America. My talk tonight is about race and history and the urgency of now. And as you can, as Milton mentioned, as Dr. Katz mentioned, most of my films deal with history and deal with race in one form or another. And I'm always trying to find ways to make those movies, even though they're about history, they're about the past in one form or another. We're always trying to find a way to connect them to today. And that's really kind of where I think we link our talk tonight with the urgency of now. Because the urgency of now, it's an urgent moment in this country, isn't it? It's an urgent moment. We have a situation in this country where we have just had an election, and the president of the United States lost, and we have a new president now, president-elect, and the former president, at least the president until January, refuses to acknowledge that he lost the election, and that's an amazing thing, folks. that's an amazing thing. I mean, for all you great students out there that are watching this tonight, this is one of those moments in American history that your grandkids are going to be talking about. I mean, your grandkids are going to be asking you, Mama, Daddy, Grandpa, Grandma, tell me about the crazy things that happened in 2020. And these are the crazy things that are happening in 2020, the historic things that are happening in 2020. It is an amazing, insane time right now in this country. The world is looking at us. The world is fearful for us, as we are. I think many of us are fearful for ourselves. And they're wondering what's going on in America. And for me as an artist, as someone who tries to tell stories, make films, express my feelings and beliefs through film, it is about, you can't really ask for a more connective time from your art to the period we're living in. I think that when I first started making my films, some 30 years ago now, people always used to say, why do you make movies about race? Why do you always telling these stories about, racism and prejudice and slavery? And why do you want to get into all that? No one asked me that anymore. No, they don't ask me that anymore. And they don't ask me that because of the fact that we had a president, a leader in this country, who was a racist. And I mean, it's not that we haven't had racist presidents before. Most of them at least tried to hide it a little bit, but we've had one now who not only didn't hide it, but sold it straight out and encouraged others to be racist along with him. And that's part of this historic moment we're having right now. We've got this pandemic that's going on that I must tell you that my father, not my grandfather, my father was born in 1898. He was 60 when I was born. And he was like about a college student, a college age student, high school student in 1918 when the first pandemic was happening. And for me, having had an older father like that, it made history, and it made the past not that far away. My father was born in 1898. That's some 30 years or so after slavery. And he told me that his grandmother saw General Sherman march to the sea. They grew up in Mississippi. And the image of my grandmother seeing those Union soldiers, traveling through the state has always stayed with me. And that's a moment in history. And my father being in the pandemic, the first pandemic, is a moment in history. And now this is a moment in history. And I hope that we all kind of take assessment of it in that sense, that we all look at it like it is. I mean, this is a moment in history right now. It's a moment. And it's important to kind of drink it all in and take it all in and understand that this is this amazing time. And I hope that it is influencing your art. I hope that it is speaking to your art in some kind of way. Not that you have to paint or draw or make films about, exactly what's happening, but I hope that this kind of attack on democracy, the fact that this is the first time, I think, in our entire history, that we've had a president that didn't concede. I mean, think about it. I mean, when there was an election during the Civil War, and there were mail-in ballots during the Civil War, and soldiers were filling out mail-in ballots and sending them to be counted during the Civil War. And no one questioned the results of the election during the Civil War. It's crazy. And no one had to force someone to concede during the Civil War. But here we are today waiting for a concession. And so this is an amazing time. And I feel very fortunate that I've been able to be involved with art that speaks to that. We show the trailers of 3 of my films that I've worked on. And with Black Klansman, when we were making that film, we had no idea it was going to become so relevant. Not that I believe we knew he had become president at that point, and we knew he was a racist. And we knew he was a racist because, when we look back on history, that moment he came down the escalator and said Mexicans were rapists and criminals. And he thought some of them, of course, were probably okay people. That really should have been it right there. That should have been, okay, it's a wrap. Cut. That's it. No, do not go past go. Do not collect $100. That should have been it. That should have shut the whole show down right there. But we still have a lot of work to do in this country. And people didn't reject that message. In fact, a lot of people, clearly, we just had an election and 70 million people, 72 million people voted for, I call him King Tang. King Tang, he thinks he's a king, clearly, since he doesn't want to concede. And of course, I call him Tang because you guys, some of you probably don't know this, but you're too young, but there was this orange drink that we had in the 60s, and you put it in water and you stir it up. It's called Tang, King Tang. And for me, King Tang told us who he was from the very beginning. And it's not that we didn't believe him. We the opposition, we believed him. And we did our best to try to stop him. But we're a divided country. And we've always been a divided country. In fact, you know, when I talk about the Civil War, I mean, I would argue there's still a kind of a cold civil war going on in the country right now. And I hope it doesn't get hot. We have moments of hotness. We have moments of terrorism in this country, which is a real tragedy. It's fearful. It makes everything in this country, puts everything in jeopardy, including our democracy. But the fact that this guy could become elected and then could come as close as he has the second time to winning again, we got a lot of work to do in this country. A lot of work to do. And that's not a bad thing. That's, you know, that's just what we have to do. It doesn't depress me because I believe in our young people. I believe in you. I believe that young people, not all, obviously, but a lot of young people, I think the majority of young people get it now. And I think you want a different kind of nation and a different country, one that's not wrapped up in racism and sexism and homophobia and ignorance. But as with everything else that we know from our history again, that progress only happens when you fight to achieve it. And we have to fight to achieve it. Just like right now, I mean, the question is whether this dude is even going to concede. I think he will, but what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? That's a question that, you know, we shouldn't be asking ourselves, but we probably better, because who knows with this dude? And who knows with the people that are empowering him and supporting him like they are? Who knows with them? And that's probably the bigger question. I mean, this dude, Tang will eventually go away and slither into the, you know, remote parts of our history somewhere. But the people that support him, that's the real issue. That's the real question about our future, isn't it? And that's all part of that urgency of now. And art, I believe art can help that. Art, you know, when we made Black Klansman, we didn't know Charlottesville was going to happen. And the movie is about, you know, Ron Stallworth infiltrating the Ku Klux Klan and dealing with having these phone conversations with the Grand Wizard David Duke. And then when Charlottesville happened, we saw that David Duke was there and he was celebrating King Tang. And he was talking about how King Tang inspires them and how he, you know, directed them and encourages them. And that's a tragic part of the story, but it is a real part of the story. And it's something we have to admit, and we have something that we have to embrace and understand. And so the joke has always been that King Tang and David Duke wrote themselves into our film, and they did. So Spike inserted them into the ending of the film because they wrote themselves into the movie. I mean, we didn't look for that. It just happened, and we could not deny it or avoid it. And it gave the ending of the movie a new kind of urgency. And so it's not that your art, you have to try to look for these things. In your art, you really just have to express these things. And when you express what's going on in the world, and when you express how you feel about things, and when you express the things that you care about, it's always current and it always connects to now. And that's the thing that I've learned through making films. That you don't have to try very hard to make it contemporary. If you just allow it to times to speak to you, and then allow the history to speak to you, you'll form a connection between those two that will make things very relevant. And that's what happened with Black Klansman. And that's one of the reasons why I think it was such a big success, because we found a way to, to really speak to today. With our film, with our film, The Five Bloods, very similar thing. You know, this project came to Spike. He brought me into it to co-write it with him. And, you know, it's set today, but it's about the Vietnam War in the 1960s and early 70s. And so it's a long time ago. And we didn't have to try to make it relevant. It just was relevant because, you know, one thing that we did in the film, and this was Spike's idea from the very beginning, the flashbacks in the film are, he didn't use old age. We didn't use other actors or try to make our CG, our actors that are older now into younger guys. We didn't do any of that. We had the same actors that are in the 60s and 70s in the film. They were playing themselves when they were young in the film. And the reason that Spike did that was for a variety of reasons, but I think the thing that we tried to weave into the story in terms of what that choice meant in the movie was that war never really goes away. Once you experience war, you age, the war ages with you, and you age with the war. And that's kind of how I think any traumatic and dramatic and life-changing experience, when that happens to you, that memory ages with you. And that's what we tried to do in the film, to really kind of show that. And that's one of my favorite parts of the film, that how war, it never really goes away. And you know, I've gotten messages from veterans that have suffered with PTSD, and that's kind of the best example of what we're talking about. That how the war really ages with you. And then there was the murder, and I would call the lynching of George Floyd. And the lynching of George Floyd shocked the nation. And it shocked the nation because it was a lynching. It was a lynching. And it was lynchings were public. They were public events. And we talk about that lynching in Black Klansman, the lynching of Washington in Waco, Texas. And so lynchings were events where, you know, in the past, back in the old days, back in the 20s, when they were really lynching almost on a daily basis in this country. They had excursion trains go to lynching. They made postcards out of the lynchings. They were big circus carnival type events. But with George Floyd, it was a public lynching that really kind of defined us as Americans, I think. And it shook us to our core, because people now have cell phones and they can photograph, you know, police abuse. And so let's talk about the George Floyd lynching for a moment. So the policeman has his knee on his neck and he's got his hand in his pocket. And two other policemen are holding George Floyd down. And the policeman that's got his hand in his pocket, he looks about as cavalier as if he's just waiting for a bus. And he seems totally disconnected from the man beneath his knee that is pleading for his life. And he's pleading for his life, and there are people on the sidewalk photographing it who are pleading for George Floyd's life as well. Now, if that had been a dog that the policeman had his knee on, if that had been a dog, someone would have stopped him from killing that dog. Someone would have intervened, someone would have rushed that policeman and knocked him down, and probably a white person would have done it. Because a white person has the only agency in the country to do that to a policeman and not be shot. And that's why the Black people that were photographing it on the street, that's why they couldn't intervene, even though they knew he was being murdered like a dog. They couldn't intervene because they knew the police would probably shoot them. That says a lot about community and the police, doesn't it? That you see the police murdering someone, this person beneath his knee is pleading, calling out to his mother, having his last grasp of air, his last breath. You know he's dying, but you know you better not intervene because you know the police will probably kill you too. It says all, doesn't it? It says all. And the fact that if it had been a dog, someone would have intervened. That's the thing that stays with me about George Floyd and about all the George Floyds that have happened that we didn't get on camera. And we know they've happened, and we've seen, the list is long, but I'm talking about not just the list that we know, but I'm talking about all the other ones that we'll never know their names because their deaths were not recorded and their deaths were not acknowledged and their deaths were murders and lynchings that the police got away with. And it's not to say that the police are bad guys because most policemen are not bad guys. We all know that. I know I have great friends that are policemen and they're good people and they do an amazing job, but there are police in this country who are racist, and the other police that serve with them, they tolerate it. They tolerate their racism and they tolerate knowing that they're racist. And that's a big, big, big problem in this country. And it's been a big problem for a very long time. And we've got to find a way to exercise that from our public life, from our nation as a whole. I mean, if we don't, this is just going to continue. It's we see it now because there's cameras on people's phones, but this has been happening forever. I mean, the police grew out of, the concept of policing grew out of catching slaves. And so you got to understand the police have always had a bad relationship with the Black community because Black people have always known that the police, the job of the police is to monitor the Black community. And that's a problem. That's a problem. I remember Dick Gregory telling this joke one time about, Black people not doing anything wrong. And anytime they see the police, we get paranoid and get scared. And white people robbing a bank and they're not even concerned. The police drive right by. And that's the reality of our relationship in the world with policing. We got a lot of work to do with that. And one of the things that the Five Bloods did was we were able to link in, and we did this way before George Floyd's murder. We linked in Black Lives Matter to the story. And that was another one of those examples of how, you know, you don't have to work really hard to try to make your story relevant to today, even though it's set in the past. You don't have to work that hard. You just have to want to go there, and you gotta want to do that. And there's always ways of connecting, you know, the past and the contemporary to your art. You just have to want to do it. You have to seek it out. You got to look for it. And we found a way to do that in our story. And so, you know, we were very proud of that, and it made the film really speak to audiences in a new way, in a different way because of that. And people really responded to that, and that was really great. But that's the challenge, though, of this moment in our history, this urgency that we've got now, is we've got to find a way to be more honest about who we are in this democracy. When you look at my recent film, The 24th, which is about the Houston riot of 1917, again, it lets you know kind of everything you need to know about the problem we have with our history and how race and history, I argue that those two things go together. And the more you know about our racial history, the more you understand about today. The 24th came to me many years ago. I've been trying to make this movie for a long time. I saw a photograph of the 63 Black soldiers on trial, all sitting together in this courtroom. And they were surrounded by white guards, white soldiers, and with fixed bayonets on their rifles. And the caption said, "The largest murder trial in American history." It's like, wow, what is that? And I mean, I'd never heard anything about this. 63 Black soldiers sitting together, guarded by white soldiers, the largest murder trial in American history. What's this all about? And because it's about murder, you think we know everything about it, because America loves murder. America loves talking about murder. Murder is like every TV show there is about murder damn near. So how could this event go past us and us not all know about it? Well, it's because it's about race, and it's an uncomfortable story, and it's a difficult story to deal with. And so it was buried in our history, and no one was taught about it. White folks know about it. It's about, the event came out of the Houston riot of 1917, and people in Houston didn't know about it. I mean, it's amazing. And in Texas, you're taught Texas history, but they didn't teach you that Texas history. So this is the problem. This is our problem. You know, the history owns us. We don't own the history. The history owns us because there's all this history that shapes our lives today that we don't know about, that we don't understand, that we've never been taught, that we don't know where to start in understanding it. And because this history is difficult for us, teachers aren't taught how to teach it. And that's all a big, big, big problem. And because of all that, the history owns us. The history is looking at us going, you ain't gonna talk about me because I know you don't know how to talk about me. So you're gonna have to avoid me because you might say the wrong thing and get in trouble. That's kind of where we're at with all of this. And so teachers avoid it because it's don't touch that because it's hot. It's scary for folks. And this is a big part of our problem, that we have to go there. We have to, this part of our lives as American, this history, this undiscovered, this silent, hidden history, it defines us. It defines us every day. And people like the policeman that murdered George Floyd, you wonder if they had been taught any of this, if they might have been a little less able to just put their knees on his neck and just sit there like he wasn't a human being. That's the thing that I argue about history and race, is that the more you know about the history, the more people become human beings today for you. The more you understand why people do the things they do. The more you understand why we face the problems we still face. And anything that we can do to make each other more human, that's a really important thing. Because we live in this very complicated culture, this very complicated American society, a multi-racial democracy. And because of that, we have to understand each other. We have to know a little bit about each other at least, and we have to have a respect for each other. And it's that respect for each other is what makes us a strong nation. And we're losing that. We've never totally had it. I mean, the thing about our current situation, the joke I make is that in the ghetto, well, let me just back up. When Obama was president, his presence just shook the foundations of the country. His Blackness just shook the foundations of the country. And I say that because the result of his 8 years of being president was King Tang and Make America Great Again. Why would we need to make America great again? Well, because we had 8 years of a Black president. And that Black president represented for those people that support King Tang, it represents for them the end of their nation. Obama represented, I remember people would say to me, he's divided the country so much. Well, that's because he was Black. He never said anything to divide anybody, but his Blackness was a problem because his Blackness in the highest office in the land is a problem. And that shapes division. And that's what makes America great, is that he became president. I mean, the joke was when we were kids, if there was ever a Black president, he would be dead like the next day. So when he became president, it was like, glory, hallelujah. America finally did it. America's, maybe we're gonna be okay. Black folks and red folks and brown folks and yellow folks and gay folks and trans folks and all the people that have been on the outside of this country, they saw this as an emancipation. But other people saw it as the end of their nation. And that's why they needed to make America great again. And so just like in the ghetto, when Obama ran all the roaches into the cracks and crevices of American society. All the racist roaches went and hid for those 8 years because they knew he was in charge. And America seemed to be kind of moving in a better direction. We knew that the battle wasn't over. I mean, a lot of people wanted to claim victory, but I think most of us that know what's really happening knew that this was a huge game, but the war was not over. And so when Obama left, it's like in the ghetto when you turn on the lights and all the roaches, they're there. They were there in the dark and they scatter, right? Well, the roaches the King Tang was like the roach whisperer. He told them to come on out. Come on out now, it's all right, it's safe. And all the races have come back out, haven't they? And people are, my cousins in LA recently were telling me about they had to go to the doctor in Orange County. And there was an elderly white man in the waiting room, and he started calling them nigga right in the waiting room. And I've had friends tell me about getting on buses and people say, white power. And that stuff didn't happen even 10 years ago, because people kind of knew that day was supposed to be over. I mean, that stuff happened to me as a kid. I mean, that stuff happened to me back in first day of kindergarten. I got called the Big N. That's 1963. That's a long time ago. But it's happening again. And why? Because someone sent the message out to the racists that, come on out, y'all. It's our day again. That's why history is so important. Because when you know how it happened in the past, you can recognize it when it's happening today. And you might even, because you know about the past, you might even know how to deal with it today. It's a scary time right now, because even with this guy losing and hopefully going away, he never goes away. Because those 72 million people, and not all of them are racist, some of them are just kind of confused, but a lot of them are racist. And a lot of them believe, and they would never claim that they're racist. And I mean, a lot of them, they're not like the Nazi, Klan type racists where they wear the hood and the swastikas and the evil stuff like that. No. But they don't mind racism. Not at all. And they don't really even understand what racism is. And they always say, oh, that's not racist. I'm not racist. That's what he said's not racist. Well, yeah, they truly do believe that, because they don't have a clue to what racism even is, because they were never taught. And what they were taught was that racism doesn't really exist. And we've got to do a better job of teaching our fellow Americans about all these things, about history, about racism, about homophobia, about sexism. We got to do a better job of that. Because it's not that we should be looking down at them. That's kind of part of the problem. We got to find a way to extend our hand to them and bring them in and understand why they don't understand. And politics really can't do that. I mean, it can set the stage. It can kind of set the atmosphere for all of this, but to do better. But it really can't make community. That has to happen from people reaching out to others and hopefully finding a way to explain to others that don't understand what the deal is. And that's hard work. That's really, really hard work. People have done that. I mean, in the civil rights movement did that. The gay rights movement did that. The women's movement did that. And so we're still in the process of doing that. But people, that's something that you have to do kind of as a citizen and as a friend and as a family member and as a relative. That's what you have to do to other people to try to teach them what the deal is. And it's complicated and it's uncomfortable, and you sometimes lose friends and people don't understand and they get pissed and they get offended. And so a lot of people don't say anything, but that's our job to say something. That's our job to kind of, again, not to look down on them, but to kind of try to relate to them and try to make them understand. I mean, poor white people, middle-class white people, are just like middle-class and poor Black folks. We're all in the same boat. We all are suffering from the same problems. But things divide us up and they make people feel like their problems are unique to themselves. And of course they're not. So that's our job. That's the thing that we've got to do. We've got to move forward in this country. We can't wait for people to figure it out. We've got to kind of move forward, and hopefully we can bring folks along and teach them along the way. And that's going to be a tough job, but that's what we have to do. You know, in terms of the urgency of now, I think that if we get real with ourselves and get real with our neighbors and our friends, and young people, don't think you're immune to this, because I know that young people can be just as ignorant as old folks. So you've got to talk to your friends as well, and you got to hit them to the deal, and you got to challenge them when they get ignorant, because when you don't challenge them, they grow up to be grown ignorant folks, and they just spread the ignorance further out, and it makes life bad for all of us. So that's our civic lesson for today, and that's our job as Americans. I think the more uncomfortable you are, the more American you are, because in that discomfort, that's progress. That's truth and honesty, and that's moving this whole movement forward, this whole issue forward. Maybe Milton, we could ask a few questions now.
See, Kevin, can you
Yeah.
hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, boy, you gave us so much to think about. My goodness. Boy, 10 lessons wrapped up in one, to say the least, and I really appreciate it. Hopefully,
Oh, thank you.
all the other people online appreciate it as well.
Beautiful.
You know, you remind me, and I'm sure you know this, and that some of our audience does too, that William Faulkner said, "The past is not dead, it's not even past." And certainly your films reflect that idea. And the past haunts us. And as you said, we can't get to the present. We can't move in progress unless we recognize the past, the true past, not the idyllic past.
Amen. I mean, that is that Faulkner quote. I've always loved it, and you're totally right. I mean, that you know, I think it's that avoidance of the past that has really damaged us as a nation, and I, you know, it's that ugly part of the American story that is the most important part of the American story. I mean, the film that we worked on together about John McClendon, I mean, you know, there's a section in that film about, you know, how they had to plan everything to go on the road, to go play ball games, and how they had to plan where they're going to stop to eat and where they're going to, you know, sleep that night, and where they're going to get gas, and you had to plan all that stuff out. And you know, people, you know, even Black people, you know, generations now, they don't understand that what their you know, their grandparents and their grandparents went through just to play a basketball game. And it's that kind of thing that the more you understand about all of that segregation isn't just not being able to sit on the bus in the front. That segregation and Jim Crow and anti-Semitism and sexism and all the isms, you know, it affects people's lives in so many different ways that, you know, it's hard to ever understand.
Let me ask you about a segment in your film, The 24th. So at one point, I guess it's late in the film, one of the characters, one of the Black soldiers say, "No one's innocent here. Not them, not us, nobody." So if you could talk about that, just those words, and I'll say them one more time, that nobody's innocent here, Not them, not us, nobody. If you could talk about that and what it's meant, what the meaning of that statement is, please.
Sure. Well, in the film, I don't think I'm giving anything away here, but in the film, the 24th Infantry is sent to Houston, Texas, and they're horribly abused by the police. And they're just abused and abused, and eventually they explode and they march on the city, and they kind of went after the police. And then as with riots, what happens in riots, innocent people are always hurt. Innocent people always pay a price. And Dr. King's great quote of a riot is the language of the unheard. I mean, that's that explosion that happens, and then innocent people get injured. And so that quote in the film is what happens when the unheard finally explode. That the guilty that have been oppressing and hurting and taking advantage of them, they're obviously not guilty. They're obviously not innocent. But when you act out on your oppression and you act out and you hurt others, including the innocent, but even the guilty, even when you hurt the guilty, you're no longer innocent. And that's a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. That kind of morality is kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around, that there are no innocent bystanders. When violence erupts, everyone ends up being guilty. And that's I think the hardest thing about society. That society, you have to work really hard to hear people so they don't explode. Because when they do, no one's innocent. No one ends up being innocent. And that's almost the story of race in American life. I mean, that there are no innocent bystanders.
It is a hard truth. And what I appreciate so much about that film, and I'm sure other people do as well, and those who haven't seen it certainly should, is that hard truth is so difficult to assess and to own. And in most films, we don't have that truth. We have guilty ones and we have innocent ones.
And Hollywood, we like to, I have to include myself now, since I guess I work with these guys now.
Now that you have an Oscar, you do.
Yeah, I can't say them anymore. Yeah, we like good guys and bad guys in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly there are some people that are badder than others, but it's never quite that easy. I mean, that's the thing that I think for all the film geeks out there, that that's what we learned from World War II, really. In World War II, it ushers in film noir. Where it's mainly gray. It's no longer black and white. It's mainly gray. And I think when you put yourself in other people's point of view, that's when you start to understand, and you understand the complications of morality and specifically American life.
And I also thought what you said tonight is incredibly important for all of us to hear, especially our students, about the role of art in humanizing society.
Yeah, I truly do believe in that. And I think all the artists that we all admire, they all did that in some form or another, and they found their way of doing that. And that's why their art kind of stays with us, because it connected to humanity, it connected to us as being humans. It connected in some kind of way that it's almost like a spiritual, magical kind of thing almost, where you really can't put your finger on it, but but it definitely touches you and speaks to you.
Okay. Kevin, can you talk about the films that you're working on presently? I know that you go from one to another. You're a very active person, to say the least. It's hard to get you to answer emails because
I admit,
I
it's rough these days, Milton. It's rough. And, you know, I need a secretary or something, you know? Yeah, you know, I'm working on about 5 projects at one time. I've just finished the first draft of a movie about Arthur Ashe, the tennis player, and which I'm really have enjoyed writing. Just one of the best things about writing and telling stories is you get to learn so much about great people, and you learn about, you know, all the great people that they knew and that they were involved in, which is so it's not just the subject matter, but it's all the people that his circle of friends and so forth, and all of that's just a lot of fun. So I'm working on an Arthur Ashe film. Just started working on a project that's kind of about college football. And I can't talk about that one much yet. That's just kind of starting to happen now. And been, you know, working on a television project on based on my play Becoming Martin that I did at the Coterie a couple years ago, about really kind of how Martin Luther King developed into Martin Luther King, and I'm working on a documentary about gay life in Kansas. That a friend of mine, C.J. Genevieve, wrote a book about called No Place Like Home, about gay activism in Kansas, and we're making that book into a documentary. And also making another documentary about Langston Hughes. I'm involved in that. I think I've got one other thing too. I can't think of it right now. So I'm pretty busy these days.
And how do you go from one film to another like that? If you're working on 5 things at the same time, you work on them and then just let them lie for a moment to think about.
Yeah. I mean, you know, they kind of have their own timetables, and the documentaries I work on mainly on the weekends, and the other projects kind of have different timetables. You know, between drafts, there's breaks between drafts, and that's when I'll start on another project, and you just kind of balance it out that way.
Okay. All right, and then I guess the last question is, so if you look at the films that you've worked on, and you worked on about 8, at least 8, and probably more. I know of 8, but there may be more. Some of them are documentaries, but most are feature films. So if there's one takeaway that you want the audience to think about, is there something that you can encapsulate in just a few sentences on what you want to leave them with? What's the lesson, so to speak?
Well, I think the lesson that maybe links all of them in some form or another, maybe, is that history is a living thing. That it's important to remember the past, because the past is our life right now. And that's a weird way of putting it, but maybe it was because I grew up around older people, and the past, and they talked a lot about the past, and the past isn't the past. The past is a living thing today, and it's, I think it's really important, especially that young people have a respect for that and try to bring the past into their lives today, and not live so much just for the now. I mean, obviously the now is incredibly important, but to allow the past to affect the now. And I think the more we do that, the better off we all are.
Okay. All right, well, Kevin, thank you so much. We really appreciate it on behalf of the Art Institute and all those watching you tonight. We really appreciate your comments. You gave us a lot of food for thought. I probably won't sleep tonight thinking about it all, but that's a good thing. So we appreciate it so much.
Hey, thank you, Milton. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.